Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today, we are speaking with an athlete who has been competing since 2005 and was one of the first athletes to compete nationally in the NPC when they introduced the bikini division in 2009, after having started her career in figure and fitness. With a few short breaks over the years to have her two kids, who are now 13 and 16, as well as a short break during her divorce, she returned to the stage in 2020 with new passion and fire to embrace bodybuilding as a lifestyle before she finally earned her IFBB Pro card at the 2024 Masters Nationals at age 43 after 19 years of competing, 18 regional shows, and 7 national shows. She is also the owner of Momshell Method Fitness and the co-host of Bikini After Babies podcast. Welcome to the show, GILLIAN Hughes. How are you doing?
Hi, Celeste. I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy that you're here too. And I've got to start by asking if there's anything you do, think about, or maybe a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
I've had a long time to think about this
Yes.
because I've been listening to your podcast faithfully, like pretty much since episode one. So I've had
I'm so grateful.
350 or something episodes to
Yeah.
prepare. So anyways, yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of things that are kind of going on in my head before I hit the stage. But I think that just the biggest thing is just expressing gratitude, whether I thank God or thank the universe. And I
Mm.
do this before my daughter competes as well, because she competes in cheerleading. And
Oh,
it's
okay. I was
just,
like, wait,
yeah,
what does she compete
I
in?
mean, eventually, I'm sure both my kids will end up being competitive bodybuilders, but just a real feeling of gratitude that I get to do this. I mean, it's surreal. Like when you hit the national stage, and you know, this is a day where women and men are going to walk away with pro cards, and I'm like, I'm here. Like this is so cool. I'm so happy that I got to be here, and I feel so grateful, and it just gives me like sort of like a this is really why I'm here. It's not about winning. It's not about any placing. It's the experience. I've already got this far. Just go out there and do the last little bit of the journey. So that's it really, pump up a
That's
little
right.
bit, and then off we go. So
I think that gratitude is so important for also creating longevity in the journey. I think that
yeah.
speaks to your ability to have been in this for so long. And I've actually been interviewing, it seems, anyways, like a lot of athletes who had started in the early 2000s or earlier. And I want to know from your perspective, like, what do you love about the industry and the sport now in comparison to when you started?
Well, I mean, I feel like the women's divisions have grown so much. And now we have like the workshops, we have so many representatives of the sport that are out there sharing a positive mission, talking vulnerably about things that they've been through to help educate other women. So I think just as it has grown, it's been so wonderful for the athletes because there's just so much more information. There's so many platforms like this and, other ways for athletes to share their story, which really inspires a lot of women to get started, and it helps athletes that are on their journey and maybe they're struggling and they feel like they need more support or good information. So that's something that didn't exist when I first started. I mean, we always talk about it being the ice ages when I started competing because I literally found out about competing in like a magazine, and there was a flyer up at the gym, and I was like, oh, like that sounds great. Like there wasn't like NPC news online, there wasn't like all of these promoters, there wasn't Instagram. So like, you just kind of got your information from trainers at the gym and you hopped on stage. And so there wasn't a real like network of support. And so now we have that. And I find it to be a positive thing. Like, of course, we can all talk about like, the negatives of some of the things that we see and hear. But for the most part, having that information, if you choose to use it correctly, it's a really good thing.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's fascinating as well. Like when you start now, you have so many reference points for other people's journeys, their stories, their approaches, you can really see that
Yeah.
there's many ways to get there. Whereas when you started, it was very much like, well, hopefully the person you're talking to about it will give you a decent approach, but there's not much information, like you said, not much support. And what I'm also curious about is when you saw the magazine or you saw this poster, was it the physique that attracted you? Was it the getting ready that attracted you? Was it being on stage? Like, what was it that ultimately made you go, yeah, that actually is what I want to try?
Well, I had been really involved in cheerleading and gymnastics. And so, like, I always had sort of like a short, muscular frame, and I fought it. I always wanted to be thinner than I was. And when I saw Kelly Ryan, who eventually became a fitness Olympian, but she started in Fitness America, and it was on like ESPN, and I saw her shape, and I was like, oh, like I could do that. Like this is very similar to what my body could look like maybe one day. And so it was just that there was something else for me after cheerleading because I really missed it. And I loved to work out. I just didn't really know what there was for me. I was like, well, I'm certainly not a bodybuilder because I'm really tiny. And so it was probably a multitude of those things of just kind of seeing a new challenge and also something that I perceived to be healthy because I had just started my nursing career and I was working nights and I had kind of like gone away from my routine. And so all those things combined and made it like very appealing. And so fitness is where I started, which I quickly realized that was just a huge challenge. It was a lot to prepare. And then also just putting your body through the rigors of, competing and dieting and then having to do a routine. And so as soon as I could, I stopped doing routines on stage because it was, and then also as I got older too, I was like, I don't know, like, these tricks and all these things are just kind of, it was very challenging. So then figure came around. And then that's when in 2009 is when Bikini first came out. And I will tell you, like, I'm sure people who competed back then will kind of say the same thing, but like, it was not welcomed at first. Like,
Right.
I mean, we had these chat rooms and, forums. Like, I think like one of them was RX Muscle. And I remember just getting a lot of diet information from there. And it was all dudes talking about keto. And they were like, oh, like all these girls in like Hawaiian tropics, like it'll never last. Like, no one will ever like support it. Like the names that they would say about us. And so when I went to my first show, I was like, am I going to get eggs thrown at me? Like, people don't think I'm a real athlete. Like people would say, like, do you even tan? Like, did you even work out? Like, it was,
Oh
you
my
had to
God.
kind of go through all of that and to be like one of the first ones. Like, I think my first show, there was two of us.
Whoa.
And then at North Americans, there was 20. So that was like the same year. And like the audience was dead. There was nobody in the crowd, there was just like a few people. And, but then it kind of started to like pick up. We had more like athletic physiques, like Natalia Mello hit the scene and she brought all that
Mhm.
muscle. And then it was like, that was when we really started getting rocking and rolling and it got really, really exciting. And, the physiques were more, athletic. So, but yeah, those early days, it was just kind of like let's just see how this goes and where do we buy
Yeah.
suits from? It was wild, but it was also really fun. And, you know, I'm still in it. So
Yeah, it's so amazing. You got to be part of like history, really, with the
yeah.
industry, and you've seen the evolution, the growth, even the change in approaches. And obviously, you're a coach yourself. I didn't know you were a nurse before, so I want to open that up a little bit.
Yeah.
What was your perspective like on the progression of competing as a nurse? Like, did you see anything that you were like, oh, that's a little risky for health, or were you mostly like, oh, this is healthy and worth pursuing?
Well, I think if anything, it just gave me some like hard limits as to things that like was not willing to do. Like, and back in the day, everybody sort of followed these bro protocols. And, I was like, well, I realize that dehydration is like very dangerous. And, I was very aware of what could happen if somebody did, something that they shouldn't. So I think if anything, it just sort of kept me out of doing things that I shouldn't, which is maybe why I'm still here. And I
Mhm.
haven't, had any real issues with bodybuilding being a part of my lifestyle. So I think that is really was my guiding force is like I got into this because I love fitness and I love health. And so I certainly don't want to find myself sick because of something that I did because I love being healthy. So
That's a great point. Yeah. And you had taken some time off as well, to have children. So what was happening during that time of your life? Like, were you still living the lifestyle? Were you like, I'm never gonna compete again? What was going on at that point?
well, a lot of people don't know this, but I did speak about this on a podcast recently. I actually competed pregnant with my son. I did not know that I
Yeah.
was pregnant. I remember just kind of feeling a little bit bloated. And I had done a figure competition, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, this is really weird. Like my cycle doesn't usually go
Uh-huh.
away, and so sometimes it goes away in prep. And so when it did, I was like, oh, I must be getting lean. Like it's gonna, whatever. And so it just didn't come back. And then I noticed I was really puffy, and so yeah,
Was your
I
weight
learned I
changing?
was. Oh yeah. Yeah. After the show, once I wasn't dieting anymore, I mean, I like shot up like 25 pounds, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is one of those like post-show rebounds. Like, and I thought I was doing everything right, but I was very tired. And so yeah, I mean, I found out I had competed and I was 16 weeks pregnant. So he was an oops.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so, and then again, I think, gosh, like I knew all of the things that, I was obviously under eating, and I was, like going in the sauna and all. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I was really, really nervous that something would,
Yeah.
happen to my child. It just, I didn't expect to be pregnant. I didn't do all the things you would normally do to like foster a healthy pregnancy. And he's perfectly healthy, and he's 16, and he's by no surprise is crazy about lifting weights and
Hmm.
bodybuilding, and has a little YouTube channel. He's a great student.
Oh,
So like he
wow.
came out perfectly healthy. And I had this wonderful doctor along the way, and I was so terrified. I thought, oh my gosh, like what have I done? Like I did this competition, and I did all these things that, dieting, too much cardio, raising my heart rate, all the things you're not supposed to do. And he said, honey, it's going to probably be fine. Like if first order of life is usually the baby will just take from the mom. So all you did was just malnourish yourself and take from yourself. So that turned out to be true. And he was perfectly healthy. So to say my son has really like grown up in bodybuilding, like is a true statement.
Wow.
So yeah, I got back on stage. I think, yeah, within a year after having him, it was a pretty easy, I bounced back. I mean, it was a short pregnancy, really, because half of it I
Yeah.
didn't even know I was pregnant. So again, I'm grateful and so blessed that I had a healthy child. And then my second pregnancy was a little bit rough. We were going through a rough time in our marriage, which we ended up getting divorced. But we lost my ex-husband, lost his father, and then I lost my dad like 4 months later, like
Mhm.
during the time of our daughter being born, and my dad was sick that whole pregnancy. So I think that was probably the time in my life where I thought I might be done with bodybuilding. Like it's not something I can think about. At that time I wasn't coaching full time, so I just really stepped back from coaching at all. It just, my head wasn't in that place. I didn't want to look at competitions. It gave me just a sense of what I was missing out on. I knew I wasn't done, but I thought, certainly after going through all of this and having let my body go so far, and my life is a total mess, like that, I might not ever be able to go back. And it made me really sad. But then after sort of the dust settled, and, we tried to work on our marriage for a little while, I poured myself back into it, found myself back on stage. And those were good goals to have, but I think in hindsight those were distractions from what was really going on. And then eventually it was 2017 that we got divorced. So that was sort of like a span of like 3 to 4 years of just, doing competitions, maybe not doing so well, but just trying to have a goal, just to distract myself from everything that was going on. And like in a process of healing too, from having lost my dad, and, having a baby, like all that stuff that was kind of going
Yeah.
on during that time. So that was a rough time, but I think I'm pretty good about just, I try to put on a brave face, and people close to me kind of know what was going on. But, I don't think it's a matter of not sharing what I go through, but just, it's for me, to be brave is just to kind of, everything's okay. No one will see me sweat. It's going to be fine. So yeah, I open up about it, obviously today and here and there, which I think is helpful for people to see that it was not a smooth journey, but that's maybe perhaps why the 19 years, is
Yeah.
how long it took me to get to the pro league. So
That's a really great story, and I think relatable for a lot of people, not even just from the perspective of going through something and feeling like, okay, I got to protect it from being seen or felt by others, but also like the impact that it can have on your life. And I have also lost a parent, and I know that that loss is very significant, and it makes other things in life feel a lot less significant,
yeah.
especially competing. It kind of just seems like, okay, what is the point of this? And it takes a lot of pull back to kind of get back into it and feel that, okay, yeah, this is worth doing. There was a version of me that felt that this was worth pursuing before, so it's worth doing now. But you said that it ultimately became a distraction from the difficulties you were facing in your marriage, which ultimately ended in divorce. When you say it was a distraction, was it a distraction from going home? Was it a distraction from thinking about it? What did you mean by that specifically?
Well, I think, when we're trying to cope with something, we just want something to sort of seek or like, or to like put our mind on, like a goal or something to work towards. I think that was a healthy alternative to, turning to maybe drinking or, which I've done
Mm-hmm.
that before, or food. I've done that before. And so for me, that seemed like a place to put my energy. I'm just going to focus on this. It's going to be a great distraction from what's going on. And he's a competitive bodybuilder as well. And so he did the same thing. And, a lot of times you're sort of just like cohabitating. And that certainly doesn't help when, your marriage is not going well. So I think us both choosing that was, not the best decision. But I think we would both, I mean, we're great friends. We talk every day and we co-parent beautifully. But I think we both agree that, that was just to stick in it a bit longer, because both of us
Mm-hmm.
were really afraid to end it and what that looked like. And, having to share time with the kids, which neither one of us really wanted to do because we didn't want any time away from them. So I think it just prolonged the inevitable. And then also just, wanting to have a bit of a win and a victory, like, because I felt
Yeah.
like my own personal life was a bit of a disaster. And so I thought, well, if I have a win, if I win my show or, reach my goal, like that'll feel like, but then I think most people would say, well, like you can win and it still just doesn't, you're still like, oh, but I still really feel like crap about everything that's really going on in my life. So, but I think I've learned so much through all of this. Like I wouldn't take back any of the time that it took to get here because of how much I've learned from all of these things. But I'm also like, I'm the type of person like I really do reflect on everything and I try to grow from my mistakes and whatnot. So, yeah, I can see now that that was, I think, probably a healthier distraction than maybe going out and, you
Yeah.
know, drinking and going out with the girls and whatnot, but at the same time, didn't fix anything.
Yeah, that's a great point. No matter what the distraction is, it's not always helpful. Sometimes
Yeah.
distraction is good, like you said, from spiraling or getting too caught up in it, but when it completely takes you out of it or prolongs the inevitable, which I think just that statement alone really sums up where you guys were at that point. To prolong the inevitable means you both knew it was coming, but
Yeah.
weren't ready for it to come yet. So I can almost guarantee you there's women listening to this who are in that situation right now, and bodybuilding is their distraction. It is what's giving them a win every single
Yeah.
day. What would you tell that woman who is like fighting for her marriage, but also kind of out of it, but maybe wants it to work? Like, what would your advice be from your own reflections?
It's so hard because I hate to give advice because I'm certainly not a marriage counselor and I don't have all the answers. But I mean, some people, they can see the writing on the wall, but they just don't want, they're not ready to face it. And so it is just a matter of time. And I also think too, like when you do something like this and you set a goal and you have challenges like you overcome a really hard week and you stay on your program and you work on your posing and you do all the things, you tick all the boxes like we always say, right? You feel stronger. And so if you can get that strength out of doing something like this that makes you maybe be able to see what it is that you really want or fight for something, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just that when it becomes like, I'm just looking the other way for right now because I don't want to pay attention to that. That's when I think it's probably like you're just really ignoring what, needs to really be talked about. But I think both people have to want to work on it. And so if
Mhm.
the partner is saying like, I wish we had more time for us, but you're always at the gym, then that could probably be pushing you farther away from fixing something that maybe is worth fixing. So, but I don't know. I think with matters of the heart, like I think once you've decided, it's pretty hard to change for that to change.
Yeah, definitely. So you
Yeah.
obviously got through that. How long ago was the divorce? 2009, was it?
2017.
Oh, 17.
So yeah, yeah. So it was, yeah,
Like
2017
7 years ago.
in 2018 actually was the year that, and I did a competition that year to distract myself as well from
Yeah.
just how I was feeling about, navigating my life as a single mom and just needing a goal, which I
Yeah.
think that's not a bad thing because again, it kept me from, going out on girls' nights and, throwing
Right.
myself out there, which I really wasn't ready to do. So, I don't think it's obviously not been a negative thing at all to pour myself into that when I'm trying to like, cope with it. It's just, I think now, I'm in a much different place and, I'm not going to, use it as a distraction. I have to face
Yeah.
things head on now, being a little bit older and, and such, but yeah.
That's just awesome.
Have you ever been told that you can't heal your relationship with food unless you stop competing? Or do you feel like a lost cause because every time you've tried to heal your relationship with food, you're always met with the same challenges, judgment, shame, and guilt? But you're ready to get to that root of your relationship with food and really understand your habits and behaviors and make lasting changes that are going to drive you forward in your competition goals as well as your life. And of course, if you don't want to stop competing in this sport that you love, but you also don't want to continue down the rabbit hole that is setting you back in your life, emotions, and potential for success on stage, I want you to know that you can get through this. And no, you do not have to stop competing in order to do so. You truly deserve to have successful preps, productive improvement seasons, and peace of mind year round. Because when your head is full of thoughts of food, eating, or guilt, you cannot invest that energy into the goals you truly care about, which is a big reason why I launched the 5-week food relationship program and why it has been my most highly demanded program to help competitors like yourself make peace with food so they can pursue the sport they love for the long run without having to worry about sacrificing their mental health. If you want to learn more about this program and hear from others who have done it, then visit www.celestial.fit/foodfreedom. Scroll through that page, get some information, and if you're inspired and you are ready to take action on this, go ahead and apply to work with me, and I will be getting back to you within 24 to 48 hours to go over your application and discuss your concerns specifically to determine if and how I can support you. Again, that is at www.celestial.fit/foodfreedom.
I think that it takes a lot of courage to be able to look back to and see, okay, this is what was happening at the time. This is why these things felt the way that they did or went the way that they did. But also to recognize how you showed up for yourself in that time. You committed to bodybuilding. It was a healthier habit than, say, drinking or, yeah, going out with the girls or maybe getting into something that you weren't ready for yet. You were having to grieve what you thought would be as far as like time with your kids, as well as like the marriage and also maybe future visions of family life. What did you learn over the last like 7 years of single mom life that had you known it then maybe would have made it a little bit easier?
Well, I mean, I was in a relationship shortly after my divorce, which I really wish I would have taken a little bit more time
Mm.
just to figure things out and think about what it is that I really wanted. And then when that ended, I took a period of time just to, try to figure out what my goals were and where I was headed. I was sort of living somewhere I didn't really want to live. I was like stuck in a small town away from the city and so, since then I have met my now husband and we've been married since 2020. So, but I think, I carried a lot of shame with my divorce. And I think that impacted my self-esteem. And I think in a lot of ways, like I self-sabotaged not only in business, but like in my fitness endeavors as well,
Yeah.
almost because I just feel like I didn't deserve it. And like, our marriage ended very amicably, but I think at the time it was really hard for me to accept that everyone had a different version of what happened. And there was, his version, my version, other people's version. And then there was like the truth of what it was, which was just two people that fell out of love, which is maybe sadder than something salacious that is like an affair or
Mhm.
something like that. But I had a really hard time with thinking what people were saying about me, and
Mm.
how my kids felt, and letting people down, and I think that really really impacted me, even like feeling how I felt. Just, I'm being really candid here, but like
Yeah.
just being a single mom, like I just felt
Sure.
like it was like just not how I pictured my life. And it was tough. It was really tough on me as to identify as that, which is interesting because when I was married and we were heading towards divorce, it was what I really wanted. I was like, I'm ready to like just
Mhm.
start my life over. Like, I'm this boss babe. Like, it
Yeah.
felt very powerful. But once I got in it, I was like, I'm like really alone. Like, I'm
Mhm.
really, I look up to women who are just killing it as single moms. And I don't know that I ever felt like I was. Like, I always felt like I was, just a hot freaking mess. But it's
Mhm.
funny because my kids look back on that and they're like, "Oh, mom, we didn't know that you could barely put Christmas presents under the tree." And I was like, "Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
like it was really rough. That Christmas was, I had to borrow money from grandma. And so I did better than I think. But looking back, I don't know. It was just a weird time for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I appreciate your candor and vulnerability as well because there is that, I guess you could coexist with like, I'm powerful, I'm capable, I can get through this, and also the I'm feeling like a lack of self-worth, I'm feeling alone, I'm questioning my abilities, I'm struggling in these areas. I think those things can coexist, but it creates a difficult dynamic where you do kind of wake up later and you're like, what just happened? And how did I get here? But ultimately, you did garner more self-worth. You're in a healthy marriage now and a happy marriage, it sounds like. And your fitness journey has obviously evolved with this too. So there's so many places I want to take this conversation. Honestly, Jillian, I'm like, do I go here? Do I go there? I'm like, do I keep talking about your family? I think I'll circle back around to your family,
Yeah.
but I want to hear more about how that impacted your fitness journey and the self-worth piece because you had come close to your pro card multiple times. And in the last 2 years, especially, you were like climbing up, getting closer and closer. So, what do you feel you had to focus on or improve mentally to finally win your pro card and feel worthy of that?
I mean, I think it really comes down to just believing I can I can achieve it and that I'm worthy, because I don't think even after, finding my husband, and we get married and we have this great life and all these good things are happening, I'm still not feeling like worthy. I still worry, oh, what does like person think about me? And like my past, which like it's not terrible, but I carried so much shame from, just the fact that my marriage failed, and just other failures as well. I always take that hard. And so I think that in a lot of ways I can see myself. There's a video of 2022 when I lost my pro card by one spot, and I feel like I gave it up. Like, I always think about that day. And I remember sort of the day before, my mindset was, I mean, I was starting to lose my marbles. I was by myself in Pittsburgh. And I remember texting my coach at the time and I was like, I don't think I belong here. Like, I don't feel ready. I feel like I'm falling apart. I feel like tomorrow's going to be a mess. And it was so strange because I usually keep myself together, but I think it was because I was so close, because the 2 weeks prior I had gotten third at Universe, and I put so much pressure on myself. I couldn't even see that, like, it's going to be okay. Like, if you don't get your pro card, like, you get to go back home to a life you love. Like, it's going to be okay. And so it was part that, but then also just like I knew how close I was, but I just thought I'm just never going to get there. Like, things just don't work out, right? But then I have all this evidence of things actually working out. So I had to work through all of that, which I think between 2022 and then coming back in 2024, it was just a difference in sort of going like, this is something that I can achieve. I know that I can do it. I know I'm worthy, and it's going to happen. It might not be, this year, but I'm going to keep going because something is telling me I'm going to get there. But I had to really believe that I was worthy.
Did you do anything to help you really embody that belief that you were worthy?
I mean, I think I believe a lot in manifestation, and sort of just like putting things into the universe and like replacing negative words with positive words and just really
Mhm.
trying to stay in a positive mindset. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that I had to overcome just maybe other people's doubts in me. And maybe a lot of those are not even real. And that was the other part of it too. Like, when you go through something, and through my divorce at that time, there was, a little bit of internet bullying that I had to deal with. And I think that stays with you, that you sort of always think that anything you post or anything you share, people are talking about you or they have something
Yeah.
negative to say. And then you think, well, who really cares? I'm almost disappointed that I wasted time on that back then. And I
Mhm.
think now too, having teenagers, so my daughter's 13, my son's 16, and then I have 3 step kids that are in middle school. And so I tell them all the time, who cares? Like, are you going to see these people in 5 years? Like, don't even worry about it. Everyone's going to move on. I'm like, could you take some of your own advice, Gillian? So I think it's like, there's like a multitude of things that sort of came into be, sort of the perfect timing of everything coming together this summer, and finally getting my pro card. So yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a jumbled up answer, but
No, that's beautiful. It really captures the variety of experiences you had in order to get here. And obviously, from a mental perspective, you had to embody the belief that you were worthy of that. And you worked hard to change or transform thoughts that were negative as they came up. And you focused on letting go of what was potentially holding you back, some of the things that you had spent too much time on giving your energy to. From a physical standpoint, what were some things that you were working on? What was the feedback that you had received over the last like 2 years or so? And then what was your feedback when you did get your pro card?
so in 2020 was kind of when I really came back and I really started to go for it. That was, of course, the wonderful year of prepping in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so I
Rough.
did a show at the end of that year, and it was the first show that my now husband had ever like seen me compete in. He knew I had done, competitions. When we met, I was like, yeah, I do this thing. It's like fun, whatever. I like, I didn't at that time necessarily take it as seriously. And I think honestly, it's probably because I never believed that I could
Mm.
go any further. And then when I competed in 2020, he's like, I mean, you are pretty good. And I'm like, really? Thanks. Like, I like it's fun. And he's like, what like happens after this? And so I like told him about, all these pro shows, and we watched the Olympia together, and he's like, oh yeah, you could be Miss Olympia. I'm like, you're like really sweet, of course. Like,
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
um so yeah, so that was kind of when I said, okay, well, let's just see what happens. And so I 2021 is when I kind of really started to go for it. And my critique in those like 21 and 22 was just fuller glutes and more hamstrings. And I think, my own reflection was my presentation, because I always kind of feel like I kind of look like unsure when I'm up there. I
Hmm.
can look at videos and photos and I'm just sort of like, what do you think? Like, is it me? Like, do you like me?
Yeah.
Like, which is so different than my presentation this summer, where I'm just like, yes, like this is my time. And I think that you have to feel that way when you're even in your fluffiest part of your building season.
Mhm.
You got to feel like that, because you need that passion and belief to keep going, to push yourself when you don't see anything changing, because you're
Yeah.
24 weeks out, and the show is so far away, and you have to really envision like what that's going to look like. And so yeah, my first show of this year 24 was the DC Pro Am, and it was my first show. I felt I was bringing a new package. I felt really good, but I knew I wasn't as conditioned as I could be. And like for me, historically, it always takes me a couple of shows to kind of bring that. Um, and then stage presentation, I was, just nervous. And the stage was slippery. People will tell you that stage was a
Uh-huh.
little bit slick. So I went away and just worked my butt off on my posing. And I have a wonderful posing coach, Victoria Schmidt. And so came back to Universe with fuller glutes and just what I could in 4 weeks and better posing. And then I was third. And then I had just 2 weeks to come in a little bit tighter and a little bit fuller. And I was like,
Mhm.
that seems impossible, but I'm just gonna see. And so I just, went after it and came together, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Did
When
you
I
in
was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you change anything like increase food or cardio or just kind of continue what you were doing?
Well, I think I always say this, like, it's anybody's day, right? And everybody in that top 5 is so good. Like, everybody's bringing it. Like, at that point, little mistakes don't really happen. And so I thought, I could be 5th, I could be 3rd, but I have a pretty good shot at 1st. So I can't go too crazy and try all these different things and
Yeah.
wear a different suit and do my pose on the different side. Like, that's not what they said. All they said was just a little bit fuller, a little bit tighter. And so yeah, I did not try to come in any smaller. I did not hammer away the cardio or deplete or anything. And James is my coach and managed the whole thing to make sure that I didn't just, come like completely different person 2 weeks later, because I think people do that. I think that it's easy
Yes.
to get really carried away. And 2 weeks is not very long, but it's enough to kind of like ruin what's already pretty good. So I think the hardest part was just staying focused and believing that I could move from 3rd to 1st. I knew that the same girls were going to be on stage minus the girl who had won 1st. And they all won as bad as I do. So I had to stay really focused and believe I had a shot. And so I did have a little, like, I've talked about this on my Instagram, but there is like this little like band routine that I did with these super heavy glute bands. It's on my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little series of deadlifts and squats and lunges with bands that I think like really helped my glutes stay full. Because towards the end you do tend to flatten out no matter what. And so I did that little circuit. It was a pro figure competitor from my gym who taught me.
Oh,
And she
wow.
had one. Yeah, she's not on Instagram. She doesn't have any social media. So anytime I talk about her, I always have to like send it to her. I'm like, I talked about you again, Kristen. But
Aw.
she's from my gym and she's like just an angel. Like, I get so emotional. I talk about her because she took time out of her day to like meet me at the gym and show me this circuit. And she's like, no, you're going to win. So just do it. Just do what you need to do. And
Wow.
it's going to happen. And she didn't have to do that, but she had gotten her pro card in 22 and we were on the plane home and I was second, didn't get my pro card. And she was at the front of the plane and the flight attendant was like, now this woman in row 3 won her pro card. And I was like, and then we get off the plane
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, I know her. She's from my city. And so anyways,
wow.
we reconnected like right before Universe. She goes to my gym, but at a different time. So I'd never run into her. And lo and behold, we meet right before Universe. And she's like, do you remember me? I remember you. Whatever. We just totally hit it off. So then after Universe, I'm in the gym like, oh, I'm going to try Masters Nationals, but I just don't even know if I have a shot. And she's like, meet me here tomorrow morning. I'm going to show you the secret. I got that same feedback. And 2 weeks later, I won my pro card. So you're going to win your pro card. And so,
Whoa.
yeah. And it really happened. So I don't know, she's like my fairy glute mother or
That's
something.
so awesome. I
But I
love
just,
that.
when people are kind and they
Yeah.
believe in you, like
Mhm.
it's like the best thing. So, I've made it a pact that's, what I want to do for other people. If I can help someone else in the way that Kristen helped me and all these other women have motivated me over the years, like, it's just such a huge difference. And, it was amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is that part of why you started the Bikinis After Babies as well?
You know, it was not officially my idea. It was my one of my assistant coaches and one of my best friends, Mandy, who
Yeah,
brought up the
Mandy and I
idea.
have known each other for a few years
Yes,
as
that's
well.
right. I know. And I think she put the bug in your ear to
You
get
did.
me on it was my birthday present, actually. She said, I'm gonna get you on
Oh,
that podcast for your birthday. Um, so yeah, so when she first suggested, she's like, I think it would be really cool to do this because there's so
yeah.
many women who want to hear stories from other moms and like how they figure it out, like how they juggle everything that they do. And her and I were both prepping at the time. And I was like, this might be cool because I'm going to nationals this summer. It'd be kind of neat to like have a week by week like journal of the whole thing that's going down because we start every episode with like a little summary. So that's so great that now I've got, all the episodes leading into the
Very
shows
cool.
and the episodes in between shows to kind of like recap everything that happened. So in a way, it was sort of like doing like a journal that we could
Yeah.
share online, but also to share that story about with other people that, after 19 years, I could have kept going for 21, 20. I would have gone as long as it took to get that pro card, and I just want people to know that if they've competed 15 years ago and they think they can never get back out there, they totally can. If they've never competed before, they're 50, they've had 5 C-sections and 5 kids and, they're a grandma, they can do it too. Like anybody can really set this as a goal for themselves. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share more of that and more stories like that to inspire other women. So,
It's really amazing. And I love that you guys started that because I think it's a special niche too. And um, you also have Momshell Method Fitness.
yeah.
So that was started to help other women, really of any age, find their way in this lifestyle while juggling other areas of life. So speaking to the similar things as far as the audience for Bikinis After Babies. But can you talk more about the specific needs of a 40-something-year-old busy mom as opposed to maybe other niches of women?
Yeah, I mean, things change, right? Like our bodies change. I have a horrible analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways because I can't find anything better at this moment in time. But it's like a car, right? Like if you've got a brand new car, like it's going to go fast, like the oil's fresh, like the wheels are fresh, like the axles are all new, right? And when you get older, it's just these things are not as new and fresh as they were before. So you've got to be really mindful of not running yourself into the ground. And what we find in this area is everyone here has sets this goal of competing because they're a high functioning woman. They have big goals. It's really, really hard for them to listen to their body and say, I've got to slow down. I got to sleep more than 4 hours. It's not okay to like run myself into the ground because so many women do that. Their body fights back and we end up with all sorts of problems. So I want to be able to help women do this in a way that's healthy. That's okay. It's okay to take a rest day. It's okay to walk for cardio. You don't need to do 2 hours of HIIT and, burn yourself into oblivion. So, that's a huge thing I want to share with women. Like, people ask me, do you run? Like, how do you get so lean? I'm like, no, it's really, I don't do very much cardio. And, I eat carbs. Like I want to show women that, you have to really take care of your body as you get older. Not only for health purposes, but, if you're going to compete, you have to be mindful that you're not going to, cause harm to your body or harm to your hormones. So it just, and I think too, like our challenges, some women in their 40s are their kids, they're sending their kids off to college. I still have like little ones. I have an 8-year-old stepdaughter and all my kids are in sports. I only have one that drives. So the other 4 have to be driven everywhere. So I'm running everywhere. Right. But I've always made a way of doing bodybuilding and being a mom and having a business. And I'm not superwoman, and my parents weren't entrepreneurs. Nobody showed me how to do this. I just figured it out. But I think if I can show other people how I do it, maybe it'll be easier for them or they'll, feel less stressed and, oh, that's a great way to do that. Oh, Jillian said, do this. Okay. I can do it too. So, I think just really empowering people with the right information too is important.
Yeah, that's right. I think that there's usually a belief that it has to be really extreme or you have to give up
Mhm.
so much in order to get those results. Like the amount of women who are like, I'm so terrified of carbs or I'm so terrified of fats. It's like, uh you can eat all it actually will be better for you to do that. And I think that there's a lot of like common misconceptions, but also I'm sure you run into a lot of like the same concerns from these women because I know working with competitors, I'm like, I've heard this 1,000 times. Like I know this is I'm sure there's things you're like, girl, trust me, I've heard this 1,000 times. So what are some of those common concerns or difficulties that you hear about and how do you support them through it? Maybe you could provide us like 2 or 3 examples and 2 to 3 tips or solutions for each if you're willing to.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the biggest concern that most people say is, especially if they've never seen their body in shape after 40 is like, well, I'm over 40. So like, it's probably my hormones. It's harder to lose fat after 40. It's harder to gain muscle after 40. But I feel like it's just the opposite. I mean, I think that, we have muscle memory, we have a lot more going for us, I think, and just a different way of our hormones looking. Of course, having, less fertile hormones. And so some of those things, make it a little bit difficult to gain muscle. Everyone's a little bit different, of course, but yeah, I mean, I think that we're equipped with all the tools at any age. I don't think that, you know, I think maybe you're a little bit more, had more life experience in your 40s, but you have, lots of those things in 20s and 30s too. But I think time management is huge for anybody. But for all women to really just make sure that they're, prioritizing things. I always talk about my power list of 3 main things that I'm trying to accomplish every day, because I could make a list of 80 things and that feels very overwhelming because you're never going to get them all ticked off. And so am I going the right direction with
Yeah,
this? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
So far,
okay.
I'm hearing the knowing your body can change after 40 and everybody's different.
Mhm.
So taking the approach, first of all, accepting you can change it. And the second tip being time management, have 3 non-negotiables per day, because otherwise you'll be overwhelmed with everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just having, a good supportive coach and a good support system around you. And for people who sort of like live in remote areas that maybe they're the only person they know that's competing and they don't, have people to talk to. There's so many ways to connect with other people so that don't feel alone, and, online and Facebook and all these different places, but having, a good coach to guide you as well. Somebody who's knowledgeable that will help you feel prepared, and someone that you can talk to about your concerns, because if you can't share like, hey, this is like going on with my body, like, is this what I should be expecting? Because if you're new and you don't know, things can alarm you and they're totally part of the process, but how would you know if you've not done it before? So I think that's a big thing too. But, I think a lot of women are just like, oh, I just don't think that I could do this and have a family. And, I will say, if you have the type of schedule where you work 12 hours, 5 days a week, it's probably you're not going to see your kids very much. So I think that's just a situation where maybe that is just sort of logistically not possible. I'm not saying you can't be fit, but I think competing is something that takes a lot of time. But, nurses, I have tons of my clients are nurses working 12-hour shifts, and they balance it really well. They have certain days that they, have family time allotted, and they just really balance it. So a lot of our clients that we work with, they're overwhelmed with everything that they have to do. And sometimes we just sit and look at a week with them and go, okay, here's where we're going to plug all this stuff in. Oh, wow, you're, wasting 30 minutes like scrolling on your phone when you could like get some steps in. There's your cardio done, like sort of just really like hacking the schedules for people just to help them. And if we do see a situation where someone just really doesn't have the time, we'll just pull back a little bit. Let's go into like a building season. Stage will always be there. It's never going anywhere, but you just don't want to, sacrifice your health, your healthy hormones and your family and your career for something that really there's no deadline. You can do it until you're 70, 80 years old,
Yeah. I love that there's no deadline. That's such a good
Yeah.
point. And that's a good reason also to like take it slow, progress into finding what works for you, and know that there's seasons to life. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's going to be a lot easier, sometimes it's going to be more difficult, and there's a lot of ways to navigate each of those things. And you have a lot of great resources as well. I saw that you have like an on-the-go nutrition for moms too, which I
Yeah.
think is such an awesome resource, just to be able to have tools like that that make fitness or nutrition or taking care of yourself accessible when you are so busy is game changing, not even just for moms, but people who run a business or are working a lot. Like you said, that can go a long way.
Such a huge piece of self-care. And I don't know that everyone realizes like how much what we put in our body affects our mood, our energy levels, what we give back to our families, what we're putting out in the world. And I just know for myself, like when I'm doing my best, which is not, I'm not perfect, I ate some candy before this podcast. I'm not
Nice.
perfect.
Yeah.
I'm a very balanced person.
Mhm.
And so, of course, when it's time to prep and we're on a deadline, that's a different story, right? But
Yeah.
I think that if you just have to give yourself grace and, do the best that you can, and really like just think about the food that you're putting in your body. And even if you just step away from weighing and measuring and analyzing every
Mhm.
label and just putting good, healthy food in your body, you'll have more energy, you'll feel better. And that's just a really good place to start, really, for anybody.
So true. Yeah. And it has a ripple effect, or it can have a ripple effect on other people and things in your life as well. Like you had said right when we started the podcast that you could see your kids actually competing one day. And you said that your son has a YouTube channel and he documents his journey. So, what's been the impact of this lifestyle on your kids?
Well, it's been all positive, to be completely honest. And
Love
I mean,
that.
when I met my now husband and he had 3 kids, I thought a lot about what it looked like for
Yeah.
me to be a bodybuilder in the household, raising 5 children. And, there was a little bit of pushback from their mom, sort of not understanding bikini competitions. And is there a huge emphasis on weight? And, is Jillian always talking about the scale? Like, that is a natural concern for any person on the outside looking in. I mean, even
Yeah.
when I meet new families, like through our cheer community and whatnot, they're probably like, oh, I bet you don't have any white bread at your house. Like, they just assume that because I'm a bodybuilder, like I'm like a Nazi about nutrition, right?
Right.
But I grew up I was anorexic when I was 12, and I grew up in a household with a lot of diet noise. Like, and it's not my mother's fault. She probably won't listen to this podcast anyways, but she just was a mom trying to lose weight, counting her Weight Watchers points. And as an adolescent growing up in that environment, I started to label food as good and bad. And then I thought gaining weight was bad. And so it was just a lot of that. So I think that has helped me a lot to realize that's not what I want in my household for my girls. I have 3 daughters. And, they're going through changes. They're going through, hormonal changes, and they will come home and be like, oh, so-and-so called me fat. And, I don't want to eat in front of my, just the crazy things that they all say. And so I don't want to be, sitting there listening to them, like, just not showing a positive role model. That's, I'm always talking about my weight, or I'm always, obsessed with food. So I'm very, I wouldn't say discreet, but it's just what I do. I'm an athlete. I eat the foods that I eat. When I can, I eat food with them. I have bites of dessert. And I really don't talk negatively about my shape. I don't talk about the scale. I don't put myself down, because I just don't want them to think that that's what women do when they get older. They go on diets and they weigh everything on a food scale and they talk about how fat they are,
Right.
So, and I want them to have balance. I want them to have
Yeah.
treats, but also that they realize that healthy food makes them feel good. So the nutrition aspect is something that I've worked really hard on to make sure that everyone has a healthy mindset. And now that they're all getting older, like they all want to go to the gym. Like the 2 older boys go to the gym. And my son he's actually done a competition. The gym that we go
Whoa.
to had like just a little like, pop-up competition for any of the members that wanted to compete. So he did it. He was 15 and he was like the best poser, because he's
That's
grown up in
awesome.
bodybuilding.
Yeah, of
So he'll get
course.
on stage one day. He's 16, so he has to be 18 to compete.
It's got
But
2 years.
yeah. So, and my girls, like when I come home from a competition, like I have like this bookshelf that has this like rod
Yeah.
across, and we hang the medals up. And so like I always bring them the trophies, and they'll hang up the medals and place everything on the shelf. And so it's like a big thing. They all told their
Wow.
friends I got a pro card. It was really cool. So lots of
Oh,
support.
that's so
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, there's not a lot of kids who can say their parents a pro bodybuilder.
I know it's only been like 4 weeks. So even for me to say it sometimes is like, oh my gosh, that's really
You're
cool.
like, whose parent? Oh, me.
Who's the badass? Oh, that's
Yeah.
me.
That's so awesome. I love
Yeah,
that it's
it
had
is so
such a
cool.
positive impact. Like, and that they're
Yeah.
proud too.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is just like you can't give up. Like if I gave up and I came so close, like I don't what's my story? Like, why did you stop competing? I don't have any reason. I didn't have any reason to stop. Like, I love it so much. I was so close. I'm going to stop because I didn't win it. Like, no, you keep going until you win. So I feel like that's, what I want to show them. And, I say that all the time. Like they get discouraged about something. I'm like, how long it's taken me to get this pro card. You think that you should give up? No, you keep going.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that was another reason just to keep going. And I mean, I think that, as much as they're kids and they have their own stuff going on, like they really wanted it for me too. They were really like, they were nervous, and, they knew how much it meant to me. And we had talked about what would happen if I didn't win. I was like, guys, we'll start over again next year. It'll be fine.
Oh,
So,
cool.
I'm not to prepare yourself for defeat, but I wanted to be very, I wanted to hold myself high if that did happen, because my son was there in Pittsburgh. And his dad had competed a few days before me in the open bar in the men's bodybuilding, and took second. And
Okay.
so he was not very happy about his placing. And I thought, if that is me on Saturday and I get second, I'm going to make sure that I'm not upset, that I that I handle it well.
Yeah.
And, I have a good mindset and attitude about it, because when I took third at Universe, my husband was he was there and he was like, oh, no, are you okay? I'm like, really, honestly, it's fine. It's like, I know how bad you wanted this. I'm like, I know, I have one more shot in Pittsburgh
Yeah.
and it's, it's going to happen or it's not. Right. And I
Right.
just knew I would keep going until it did. So yeah,
Wow.
my kids have all been really involved. My son's been to a lot of shows and my daughter too. So
That's so awesome. What
yeah.
about your stepkids? You said that like their mother had concerns about you living this lifestyle. I mean, step parent life in general poses a lot of its own challenges and also
Yes.
a lot of blessings. So talk to us about navigating that. And I know you already explained how you navigated those concerns, but how did you integrate the two families together? What was that like for you guys while you were dating and then into joining the families? Yeah, all those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say it's been 5 years. So I would call this a success story. And I realize that's rare because the statistics, when we first got together and I looked at some study about, how many families blend and do well, I was like, it's not, this is going to be rough. Like, and
Wow.
the boys were older, like the two boys were the oldest of the family. So we
Okay.
had two alphas and then I had a daughter, he had two daughters. It's just a lot of kids. And then just kind of getting some resistance from, that from their mother was really challenging to
Mm.
navigate that. But I understand like the fears of any mother of sort of
Of
like,
course.
here comes this new person into my kids' lives that they're going to spend time with her. What are her values? Like, what's her views on parenting? Like, so I could, as a mother, understand her concerns. And then, of course, I've got bikini photos on Instagram and that
Right.
you just you take that and get an impression, right? So
Mm.
I never felt like I had to prove myself because I knew like that I was a good mom and I could be a good mom to them. But it's just different. It's you don't expect to love them differently. Like you love them so much. You would die for them. Like my stepson dislocated his shoulder on Saturday. I
Mm.
called Mandy boohoo crying. She's like, what's wrong? I'm like, you don't realize how much you love them until like something happens to them.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of love. Because they have a mother that they love so much. And I'm
Mhm.
just sort of like I'm the fun aunt, role in their
Yeah.
life, right? So yeah, I think just trying to identify what that looked like at first, like how involved am I? Like, do I talk to the teachers? Like, you know, I'm I'm responsible for tucking them in on the nights that they're here. So like just trying to figure out what my role was, and they're kids too, right? So sometimes you
Right.
feel a bit used and abused, sort of like, gosh, do you even care? Right. So but once you kind of get past that and see everybody having happy memories, like our first Thanksgiving and our first Christmas and all of that. And now the kids now will talk about memories from a couple years before. And I'm like, okay, like we're through
Aw.
it, like they feel like this is home. They feel like this is their family. And so yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it was a little bumpy in the beginning. We went right into the pandemic right after we got married and moved in
Mhm.
together. And so we're all in this house together and homeschooling. And I'm like, oh my, if we can make it through this, we can make it through anything. And we did.
Literally.
So, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's never a dull moment. There's always some sort of fiasco, but I can't imagine my life any other way. It's so
Oh,
quiet when no one's here because I'm so used to
I
so many
bet.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Do you have all your kids together like the same weeks or
It
time frames?
varies. Yeah, they're together at least half the month. And then, we all live within a close proximity. Like my kid's dad lives like 3 minutes away, their mom lives a few minutes away. They all go to the same school.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just a matter of like just running everyone everywhere all the time. And so there's never a dull moment. I would say that is probably my secret to staying on prep because I don't have time to think about,
Yeah,
like treats and stuff,
exactly.
but it could go sideways, right? Because if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
prepared and I'm not organized and I'm running in a million different directions, then stuff could really fall apart. But
Most
no,
definitely.
it's definitely step parenting. I've learned a lot, listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books and just to try to figure it out, because I always say this, like, you take a course on you know everything we do in life, right?
Yeah.
Like, how to do your career, and even you can take driver's ed. You do not take a course in being a parent or being a wife or like how to love somebody. Like you're winging it, right? So so I did a little bit of reading in that area just to sort of figure out, where everybody was at and how to
Hmm.
handle things. So
I think it's nice because it also lets you know other people can relate too.
yeah.
So whatever you're
Yeah.
experiencing, you're like, okay, good. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, it is for sure because I definitely, it wasn't the same as talking to my friends who had 5 of their own children. Blending is so different, being a stepmom is so different. Um, but yeah, I think we've made it over the hump, and now we're in like going into year 6 now. So
So awesome. Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's awesome and really cool that you were able to do that. Not just find love again, but also blend the families and create even more love together, which is a beautiful thing. And you came back, you achieved your goal of going pro. You've proven what happens when you don't give up, even almost 2 decades in. So, what is
yeah.
next for you?
Well, I I know it's good to take time off. I would keep going if I could because
Yeah.
I love it so much. I love all the people that I've met. And
Hmm.
now, there's pros that you turn pro on the same day as me that are prepping for shows. And I'm like, oh, I want to see you there.
Yeah.
But just in this season of life, with all the kids, fall is just very busy with all their sports. So I'm gonna let my body just sort of chill a little bit. And I think I'm 5 weeks post show now and everything feels pretty good. I feel like my energy levels are restored. I can think again.
Good.
And so, just kind of focusing on my athletes that we coach in the Midwest to compete, doing seminars. I did one on Saturday, which was like really cool. I got to like talk about
Awesome.
my experience and, do some posing with some brand new athletes and talk about, the industry. So more of that kind of stuff just to kind of fill my cup until I can like get back on stage again. But I turned 45 next August. So I think that'll be when you'll see me on stage again, is after my 45th birthday. So
That's awesome. Oh, I'm excited for that and excited for you too. Are you going to compete in open?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Not to
so
start. That
okay.
is something that I ask a lot of guests about when I talk to them on our podcast.
Uh-huh.
And it's most of them do. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't think that my body looks old. I don't feel old. I just know that it's different. I know that
Mhm.
there's a different look. And I'm new as a pro, so I can't speak without just sort of giving really just what is an opinion, because it's not fact. But in my opinion, I feel like it's a different physique, the Masters pros and the Open pros. I think that the Masters pros, they just seem to have, they're harder, and they've got mature muscle, and I think that is kind of like where I fit. I'm not overly muscly, but my muscle does tend to take a hard look when I get conditioned for stage, just based on my age. My skin is thinner, all those things. Also, what's working I think against me is that I'm really short. So I'm 5'1". So,
Yeah.
I think that if I was 5'5", 5'6", I might throw my hat into the open because I could kind of like blend in, but I feel like I'm so tiny.
Mm.
And but then there's a lot of pros that are tiny that do completely well in the open. So I think it's a we'll see. I don't know.
Nice.
I have to just maybe I do it one time, but I think it would be hard for me um to just throw my hat into the open. And I think for me too, I'm still working on that piece of belonging and being up there, and how am I going to feel? Am I going to feel like I fit in with like Olympians, right? Is that something that I'm ready for? I don't know.
Well,
So
that's exciting either way.
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome to see. Is your goal to go to the Masters Olympia?
That's my dream. Yes,
Yeah.
that would be incredible. Yeah, I feel like it's just a matter of getting started out there and just to really see what the feedback is. I mean, was it a mistake to like not jump into a Masters Pro show right away and see where what I had to work on?
Mhm.
Probably. But
Hmm.
with our timing of our family, we had a vacation planned like 2 weeks after Masters Nationals. I just could not fit one in. So I guess I don't I know what my feedback was, which was um, just build up some muscle density, upper outer glutes. Don't touch the front was what one judge said to me. So I don't have to worry about building upper body muscle, which I finally got there. That's good. So yeah, so I don't really know. People always say like the overall is your first pro show. So I've, looked at that, analyzed that, which I will say, I really feel like I'd like another chance to redo that because
Uh-huh.
because I didn't think about it. Like I did
Yeah.
practice walking to the back when I was, thinking, okay, maybe there's a chance I'm going to be in this overall tonight. But then I was class A, I won, and I'm like bawling, like,
Of
oh my God,
course.
I can't believe this. And you're separated from the pack. I don't have anything with me. I don't have my phone, can't talk
Yeah.
to anybody. And like all these other pros are kind of coming with me. I'm like, okay, we're competing against each other. Like I hadn't really got my head on straight to like get
Yeah.
out there and do it again. So I don't know what it looked like. I mean, I feel like it was not perhaps my best, like most fierce posing like it was in the morning when I went out and
Yeah.
prejudging. So I kind of like, oh, I wish I had another shot to that, but they did move me in. So
That's
I
cool.
was not last in the overall. So anyways, but I always think like, when you're stage ready, you got your pro card, like you should really probably just hop on a pro stage and see what they say because you haven't stood next to the top of the
Mhm.
top in the pro leagues, right? And that would be helpful because you can compare your photos from NBC News Online, but you're
Yeah.
not next to that person in real life. So
Yeah.
my hope is that, with guidance of my coach that I can bring what I need to be competitive, but I'm also like fully ready to be told like, you need some more time away, babe. And that's okay too, because I don't
Totally.
really know. It's like not really starting over, but it is just like a new challenge. Right. So
Yeah.
I don't have necessarily any expectations other than just to kind of see where I'm at and grow as much as I can in that season. And then if I need to take some time off, then I'll do it. I don't plan on stopping. So
That's awesome. I think that's
yeah.
really cool. Obviously, you're passionate about it. You said earlier that it's something anyone, any age can do anytime in their life. You've proven you can leave and come back and perform well and continue to grow in the sport. So, before we get your connection and how people can work with you, I'd like to ask you for your best advice. So, what would be your best advice for someone who has never competed before but wants to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
So, my best advice for someone who has never competed before but wants to, and I'm going to speak maybe specifically to somebody who is like a little older and like has had children or maybe has like some doubts but
Great.
really wants to do it. I think the best thing to do is be realistic, but don't sell yourself short. I think by being realistic, what I mean is like, don't expect to get this goal physique that you have in your vision as quickly, maybe as you think you can, but also don't sell yourself short in achieving that. Just know that that might take time because I think that sometimes people feel like they've got a deadline. I've got to get on stage at this, that you might not be able to get here by then, but you'll never get there if you don't start. So go for it, but just realize that it might not be in the timeline that you expected. But I also don't think that doesn't mean you shouldn't compete either. People sometimes say, well, I want to win. Well, we can't really guarantee that. And you shouldn't stay far away from the stage if the stage is where you want to be, do a build, lean out, do a show, get the feedback, back to the drawing board. You still have fun along the way, even if you're working towards that goal body. Because that was exactly what my journey was. And I had, you know, tons of shows that I did just for fun. And, I got so much out of it and I grew from it. And so I think that, just being realistic. You might be like, my goal is to be Miss Olympia. Good. Like you can absolutely do that, but be realistic with the timeline. You might have to, there's some steps in between to getting there. So,
Love that.
and
That's
then tip for
road to pro.
road to pro.
Hmm.
I mean, I will tell you, like, I don't know that there will be anything more exciting than that. Like, it was so exciting. Like it was so scary because of,
Yeah.
there's so much pressure. You're close and, but then coming back and being like, oh, I was third last year. Like, am I 10th this year? Like, you
Mm.
just don't know. But that rush of, the experience of these national shows, there's nothing like it. So if you don't get it on your first one, you're not supposed to. Like, you're supposed to have the ride, like the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys, like, because I don't know what else would be more exciting than that in this space. Like, competing as a pro is totally cool and really exciting, but that quest for the pro card was like the most intense and exciting. And then when you get it, it's amazing. And I don't know that it would feel that way if it happened fast,
Totally.
So,
You obviously cherish it and worked very hard for it.
yeah, it was the coolest moment. Like, I don't know how many times I thought about them saying, "and new IFBB pro," like I'd be wanting to quit my workout or, eat something off plan. I would just think about that. Like, you're never going to hear that if you don't keep going, and then when you hear it, and I have the video and I cannot watch it without crying. It's so awesome. Yeah,
that's so
the coolest.
awesome. To have something come to reality that you had envisioned for so long is like surreal.
It's like a movie. Like, I keep playing it over in my head. I'm like, did I really do that? Like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
So I don't take that experience for granted at all. Like, it was everything.
Yeah, it's like a pinnacle moment. You overcame so much. You continued to show up. You grew as a person. And there you were. You accomplished something you had dreamt of.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I love it when I get to talk to people so soon after winning their pro card too, because like that emotion is still very raw.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, yeah, your journey is still like, oh my gosh, yeah, I really went through all that and got there.
Yeah, it is. It's just, I don't know. I don't know when it'll like actually sink in and like, feel real, but yeah, it's just the coolest. It was something that I really, when I got sort of a taste of it, like in 2021, when I came third, I was like, oh my goodness, so since then I've just sort of not let it go. And it's been something that I've thought about, every January we go into prep because the Masters national shows are in July. And so I'm like, what am I going to do in January? So,
love that.
But it's okay too, because now my life can sort of like, follow a little bit of a different path, and, winter will look a little bit different because I've just for the last, 3 to 4 years, like, well, nationals is 6 months away. Like, let's go. Right. So, but yeah, it's just the coolest. It's been like 19 years. I wouldn't change a thing. And, I just encourage anybody to just get started and don't stop. There's no reason to stop. You can do it. Take a break, come back. It's always there for you. The stage will not go anywhere.
Such a great point. Yeah, I love that. There's so many reasons to keep going, and you're proof of that. So how can everybody connect with you, follow you? Thank you for being on the podcast, and also work with you.
Yeah. So my personal Instagram is Gillian Hughes _Momshell, and it's Gillian with a G. And then the podcast is Bikinis After Babies. And my personal, my fitness business page, Momshell Method Fitness, is Momshell _method _fitness. And we have lifestyle coaching as well as prep for bikini, wellness, and figure virtually anywhere across the country. So, yeah.
Awesome. Do you have a website as well?
Nope. Everything's just on social media.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure we put that in the show notes page. You guys, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, it'll be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It'll be alphabetized. Not only will you find the links to connect with us, but you're also going to see a full breakdown with a summary of the episode, the topics we covered, and episode timestamps so you can go back and listen to your favorite parts or share some of it with your friends, your teammates, your family. Let them know what resonated with you. Let us know what resonated. Tag us as you listen. It means so much to me, but even more to the athletes. So with all of that being said, Gillian, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.